And we're back. Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and I am dialing in from Dalkeith, not far from Easter Road. A wee bit further away from Easter Road is Kevin McCluskey, who is dialing in from Budapest. How are you, Kevin?
I'm good, Paul. Very well, thanks. How about yourself?
Even after seeing the lineup, you're right?
I've just about recovered after seeing that. Aye.
Andrew's just having a wee bit of fun now, isn't he?
He is. He is. He's just decided that. Put the hell, who cares? Let's just put 11 bodies out in the park and see what happens.
I mean, we had been speculating, Kevin, going into the Rangers game particularly, and then obviously the St Mirren game that followed, and then tonight, about how to use the squad, how to kind of look at your players going into the cup final. And he confirmed in the press conference that's exactly what he's doing. The league is won. He knows that we are the champions, and he's using these games to have a look at all the possibilities, not because he wants to, for example, drop Joe Hart for the cup final, but he even mentioned going into a game like that, if you lose a player, unexpectedly before the cup final, you don't want to come in cold. You don't want to bring anybody in cold. And it's quite clear that he's continuing with that tonight.
Yeah, it is. And using Joe Hart as the example, if he plays tonight and plays at the weekend, breaks a finger making a save and he's out for the cup final, you're bringing Bain in completely cold into that game. So it's a case of covering all eventualities, I think, with the team that's gone out tonight. It's given minutes to players that wouldn't normally get it. It's given some of them a last chance, I think, to push for a cup final place, because I think at the weekend he'll probably go back to a full strength team for that one and have it as a dry run for the final. And yeah, going into the final 5 games of the season, I think we were all looking at them going, there's games here, there's chances here that we can give the likes of Bernabei a few games. We can bring a Bada Haksabanovic in, see what they can do. I think it's just because we've lost the last 2. St Mirren feels like a loss. We haven't won the last 2 games, and we've lost that wee bit of momentum. And that changes the mindset a wee bit, because now you're like, why are we making changes? We want to have a full strength team and get it back. But to be honest with you, when the first 5 games came out, when the 5 games came out, you're looking at this as being a game where this is probably the kind of team you would want to put out. The one that just lets everyone get a run out, can see what they can do, see what they can offer. And come the last game of the season, come the cup final, it'll be back to full strength and hopefully back to flying.
You know this, Kevin, we think over the last almost 2 years, we've got to know the inner workings of Ange Postecoglou's mind. And then you win the league with a few games to spare, you think, no, he's going to go for the kill. He's going to try and get all the records, the points record, the goals tally. He's going to play a full-strength team. And he doesn't do that at all. He does the complete opposite. He's got this run of games. We're thinking there's no way Ange Postecoglou would go Ibrox with an understrength side. He would go with all guns firing on all cylinders. That didn't happen. And now I'm looking at it thinking maybe we haven't sussed this guy out yet, because I honestly thought that with his mentality, his approach that he's shown since he came to this club, every single game would be a prisoner. Every minute would be a prisoner. And he has spoken about freebies, but I think he meant that in a different way. You don't get any free appearances. If you're in, I want to see the best of you. I want to see a good appearance. And if you don't, then you're out the team. So that's an interesting one, because we're kind of thinking we were sussed them out, but we obviously aren't.
Aye, it's I don't know. It's like being in a long-term relationship with somebody, and you don't think they can surprise you anymore, and then all of a sudden they come up with something out of the blue. And that's what Ange has done in these 5 games with this selection, because you listen to every single one of his press conferences in the lead up to the split and the lead up to winning the league, and it's all about the focus is on the next game. It's about winning that, and then once we get that game out of the way, we'll focus on the next again, and we'll go and win that, and we'll do that. And he's got this winning mindset, and I think we're kind of buying into that and going, right, once the league's won, go to Ibrox, full strength side, play them off the park, win that game, take us closer to the 100 points and really kill any talk of comeback from that side of the city. Then we'll go on to try and get a records point tally, a records goal tally. The more the more you listen to Ange in the press conferences afterwards, you realise those things don't matter to him. They're a bit superficial, getting the records. It's about winning the league. And that's where his kind of single-mindedness is. It'll be, I will do what it takes to win us the league. From there on, it's not a freebie, as you say, but he is giving players a chance. And they're not getting a free shot. That you're not getting Bernabei coming in for the last 5 games because it doesn't matter. He's coming in, he's playing the game. If he's not good enough, he's out the team. And I think actually you've got to really appreciate that, because that's his way of keeping things going and keeping with that we never stop. It's a constant improvement.
You know this as well, Kevin. Yeah, we're focusing on the cup final, and we've got to, because you win that game. And we're in the history books, 8th treble, world records, in the second season. And during the week there, the press conference that we referred to in the bulletin earlier today, Ange Postecoglou was going on about unexpected success last season. And again, we think we know him, but actually we don't, because it's not as though we ever expected success, but we demanded it. We actually demanded it last season, because I remember the conversations Kevin Graham particularly and I having throughout the season, where he was saying as long as we're in touching distance of Rangers, and I'm thinking, no, that's not good enough. We need to have an unassailable lead. We need to win this league. We can't allow it to get to 2 in a row, because the minute you do that, then, history tells us generally 2 or 3 seasons, you're out the game and you've got to build it back up. So there is that element of it as well, where I always look at Ange and think, as long as Ange is here, we're okay. But, even he has his doubts, and he was working to his own ambitions last season, but he's even surprised himself. This time round, we're going for a domestic clean sweep. I myself am lucky enough to say that this will be the 6th in my lifetime that I've seen in terms of trebles, which is astonishing. And we will go through the team, incidentally, and then we'll get some of the thoughts of the commenters coming in as well. It's good to see Aero250 on the YouTube saying, glad to see Andrews using our squad, resting players for a potentially historic treble. He is a smart man, and we can't forget that, Kev. He's been through this time and time again, not maybe with Celtic, but through his football career. 25 years, a quarter of a century in football. He's got the experience. I've not had an opportunity to ask you, although I have written about it on the blog over the last couple of days. What did you make of his press conference yesterday?
I think it's probably just typical Ange, isn't it? He's not going to take any nonsense from anyone. He's not interested in questions that aren't related to Celtic and about this club. I don't know who it was. I can't remember who it was that asked the question about Rangers. But why would you do that?
I know.
At an Ange Postecoglou press conference. His focus and his mindset is all about Celtic. It's about taking us to the next level. It doesn't matter what they do on the other side of the city. Ange isn't basing next year's plans and signing targets and improvements to this team on what they do. It's all about Celtic from his perspective, and that's how it should be.
You know this, right? I sometimes wonder going into a press conference, because, as I said there, we think we're getting to know the inner workings of Ange Postecoglou's mind, and then he surprises us. But there's one thing for sure. We know him well enough, Kevin, that he doesn't take any prisoners on a press conference, right? So say you're going into that and you're working for a title or a company, a media company of some description, and your editor stroke boss is saying, right, I want you to find out what he thinks about the Rangers. And you're thinking, oh, come on. It must be a scenario like that, because you cannot go into a situation like that thinking that question would be a good idea.
Aye, it must be. Because you're right. I mean, if you're going in, you've got the chance to ask Ange Postecoglou, he's just been announced as being the manager of the year for the 2nd year running. He's on the cusp of a world record-breaking treble. There's so many positives about his team, his Celtic team. Why would you talk about anything else? If you want, ask him about the drop in form. If you want to take a negative view, do something like that. But I don't understand the editorial mindset to go in and want to ask any manager of any team, really, a question that's loaded and it's based on the opposition team from across the city. It just doesn't make sense. But then that's Scotland for you, doesn't it? Because that's how it works.
It's negative, and as you say, it's a focus on something that is entirely different to what Ange is focusing on, which is getting through the next couple of fixtures and then setting the team up for, by the way, Trophy Day and then a Scottish Cup final. Joe Hamilton, welcome to the show. You're watching on YouTube. Anyone else out there who's watching on the YouTube channel, I will ask you to do two things for us. Firstly, subscribe. And if you do subscribe, like Joe, you can make a comment on our live stream. And also, give us a thumbs up, because that helps with the algorithm. We made loads of videos back in the day on the channel that were non-Celtic related, and I had a spring clean. Don't even know if we were in spring, but I had a spring clean anyway, Kev, and I got rid of about 150 videos yesterday that were non-Celtic related. That does tend to put a wee dent in the algorithm. So if you want to help us build that back up, give us a wee thumbs up. Joe Hamilton, anyone guessed Angie's team selection? I know I didn't. Well, before I came on, when I was getting set up, I realised that Kevin had updated the blog. I'm pushing the blog at the moment. It's something that Kevin and I and the rest of the Acsom team are working on quite a bit, and have been over the last few months, actually, Kevin. Acsom.net is where you'll find it, and every day there will be new content on said blog. Obviously, it's all free, and at this moment in time, it's ad-free as well. But I noticed that pre-match you had put up a potential look at what you think might be the lineup tonight. Did you publish what you thought might have been the starting 11?
No, I did not. Once again, for the second game in a row, I have taken the easy route out and did not publish what I thought the team would be, because I had no idea. Because
You've given up. You've given up trying to second guess this guy.
Exactly, because it's pointless. I don't have the football brain that Angie's got to even think about what he would be selecting as the team. But I guess the other point that we'll make about the blog as well is it's all Celtic content on there. There will be no articles about 5 players leaving a club from the other end of the city. So don't worry about that.
That's a good point, Kev. It's a good point. I'm going to pick up on that, right? The world of blogging is very much saturated. I think it would probably be the best word for it. But what we feel is that because obviously Acsom's now been running for 6 years, and we have, and I don't mind saying it, won a few awards along the way for our content, we decided that because there's so much talented writers in the Acsom team, myself not included in that, by the way, because I've not been contributing to it, I've just been editing it. We would get them all on the blog and working on the blog, and what you're going to get on there, like Kev says, is Celtic content. Now, I can tell you for a fact that if we write a sensationalist or Rangers type headline, there will be massive views in that, but we're not doing it. We're not going down that clickbait route. We're going to keep you informed with our opinion on what's happening, rather than just nicking a news story from elsewhere and going for the cheap, quick clicks. We want it to be a place that you will continually visit on a daily basis, Kev, for what we hope quality writing from Celtic supporters from all over the world, by the way, because we do have contributors from Japan, Hungary, Swindon, Dalkeith, Dunfermline, where else? Australia, quite a few over in Australia, and Ireland. So yeah, get yourself onto Acsom.net. That's where it's all happening. Scott Howe is back in to say good chance for some players to show what they've got. We're going to have a look at the lineup now, and I want to know your thoughts on some of these players. I don't think it's a last chance saloon for anyone, but I was just thinking there, every game that Ange plays, up to that moment where we beat Hearts at Tynecastle, if you're going for the domestic treble, which we obviously, every season we try to do that, we strive to win the treble, and then you try your best in every game is basically playing your strongest 11, Kevin, and along the way you'll have loss of form, you'll have injuries, you'll have suspensions, etc. But there isn't really an opportunity to bring in a guy like, let's say, Burnaby and say, right, 3-4 games on you go. This is also an opportunity, I feel, for Ange to have a look at a player that he's not had a great look at, really, in Burnaby's debut season. So as we go into the transfer market, there might be one or two, not just jerseys up for grabs for the cup final, but there might be one or two doubts that Ange is in his mind in relation to, are we strong enough at right back? Do we have 2 right backs that I can count on? Do we have 2 left backs? Which positions do you think there is still a slight doubt in Ange's mind?
Whether it's in Andy's mind, I don't know, but in my mind, certainly. I'm of the opinion, and we spoke about this in the group chat as well. I'm of the opinion that you go out and you try and strengthen every single area of the park in the summer, if you can. And I'm not saying sign 11 players or sign 11 first-team players, but for a club like Celtic, if we want to progress, no jersey should be nailed on to anyone, with maybe the exception of somebody like a Callum McGregor, because he's captain, leader, different class. But across the pitch, I think there's areas for improvement. I would you start at the back. Joe Hart, I think he's been a really good goalkeeper for us for the majority of the last 2 seasons. But we're beginning to see a little bit of slackness creeping into his game. I think if he's not been completely at fault for some of the goals we've lost recently, he's been slow to get down to shots in any case. So there's definitely question marks over him. I don't think he's been as commanding in the area without Carter Vickers in front of him, which is actually when I'd be expecting Hart to come out and show a little bit more. So there's maybe a wee bit worry there. He's also getting towards the end of his career, so at some point we're going to need to look to replace him. So maybe that's an area there if you can bring in a kind of 23, 24-year-old keeper with a couple of 100 games or 100 games behind him somewhere that's got good potential still. There's an area. Across the back line, I mean, it sounds harsh because you go, we're a side that's in the cusp of winning a treble, but you could still strengthen at every single position.
Yeah.
Ralston, is he the man that's going to come in and really be a number 2? Hopefully. But if you could upgrade Ralston, you might consider it. Bernabei needs games to prove that he's the second option behind Craig Taylor, but he's not an inverted fullback, and I'm not sure he ever will be. I just don't think that's his game. So then you have to change system to really get the best out of him. So do you look to coach him into becoming more of an inverted fullback, or do you go and sign someone? Centre-back's been a weak area for the last couple of weeks. We haven't had the commanding player with Carter Vickers been out. So kind of defensively, you could look at everywhere along the back line. I still think we need something in midfield, and this is again, it was the one Alan spoke about a few weeks ago on one of the Friday podcasts. We need to have that 6 foot tall, athletic, strong centre midfielder that can kind of boss things for us, especially when it comes to the European games. We lack that at the moment. We've got a lot of good football players, but they're all quite small and lack that wee bit of physicality. So I think that's an area definitely I would still look to strengthen in the centre of the midfield. And we need another striker as a definite as well. We can't rely on Kyogo to stay fit for a full season. Although he has this season largely, you can't have all your eggs in the one basket.
No.
And as much as I think there's a lot of promise in and I hope we see it tonight, the jury's still out as to whether he's the man and whether he is the man to be second choice. If Kyo goes out and you're on O, who's behind O in the queue? There's no one. So we need to have a third striker if we want to have a big squad that's going to compete at all levels. So yeah, I mean, that's me. I would go for a centre-back, a centre midfielder. I think we still need a right winger, especially if Bada's away, which has still been the speculation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's improvements we can make all across the field. The thing is, it's pinpointing which one or which 2 areas are the absolute necessities, and that's the tough one. Because when you look at the starting 11, we have a very strong starting 11. So it is trying to pinpoint where do you prioritise.
Yeah,
I'm glad it's Ange that has that task and not me.
Absolutely. I mean, in the pre-season last time round, a lot of us were talking about that backup goalie and a backup left back. We went out and got what we thought were 2 players who would be challenging for the first team jerseys. Not quite worked out this season. Let's have a look at the team for anybody who's not seen it, and I'm pretty sure most of you have. By the way, it's not O, it's Big O, according to Ange. It's Big O.
Big O.
So in goals, between the sticks, we have Scott Bain making his first appearance of the season. We've been talking quite a bit about the goalkeeper position, Kevin. In that, Scott Bain has played in all but 2 games this season. Those 2 games being played by Benji Siegrist, and it was in the League Cup before he got his injury. So Bain makes a rare appearance, actually, against one of his former clubs. Tony Ralston is at right back. We obviously seen pictures that of Johnston training. Whether or not he'll be in the squad against Aberdeen remains to be seen. But Ralston retains the jersey. At left back, we've got Bernabei coming back in. And on the bench, obviously, we do have Taylor if the minutes are required for Taylor to come in at some point during the game. Starfelt is partnered with Kobayashi. And the thing with Kobayashi is that, I think that we suggested the reason that Iwata came in wasn't so much the fact that Kobayashi had not played well, and I don't think he had played well. I think the change would have been made anyway because, again, it was looking at the situation. I was surprised to see Welsh on the bench tonight, whereby you don't want to go in to a cup final and have no real options. So, for example, Starfelt gets injured. It seems unthinkable. What do you do then? Well, let's make sure you've got game time in Kobayashi and Awata's legs, and potentially Welsh. I wouldn't be surprised if he got some minutes tonight as well. Awata gets pushed into his more familiar role in the midfield. I think he's been really good when deployed in that position, alongside McGregor and Hatate. I think Hatate is getting played through a sticky bit of form. Actually, a sticky patch of form, and he'll come through that. And on the bench, of course, is Matt O'Reilly. And then you've got Abada, Haksabanovic, and Owen. One of the positions I was going to say is I'm not quite sure we've got the real strength in the wings. And what I mean by that is you've got Jota who can play either wing. It's up to debate as to where you think his best wing is. You've got Maeda, who has primarily played on the left-hand side for us, Abada on the right-hand side. Haksabanovic has been a bit of a floater. I'm not sure what his best position is. And of course, you've got James Forrest on the bench as well. So I think we could probably go into the market for a winger, certainly up top. I'll be interested to see Haksabanovic. I think in his last two starts, though, Kevin, he's flattered to deceive. He's not played that well. And even the impact he was making as a sub, we've not really seen that either, have we?
Not in probably his last 4 or 5 games that he's played for us. He's been pretty disappointing. I think it's been since, was it Hearts away in the Cup, when we'd all been calling for him to get a start. And he started that game and he was pretty poor, to be polite on him. I think it just was not a vintage performance by him. And since then, since then in the games that he's started, the games that he's come off the bench, his impact hasn't been what it was previously. Some of that you can put down to he's been being played on the right, and I think if you're playing him on either wing, it has to be on the left, because that's where he looks to be more comfortable cutting inside and curling the ones into the bottom corner, as he's done a few times. For me, he's not a winger though. I think he's a 10. You could even get away with him as an 8. I think, and play him in the midfield. I don't see him as a winger, even in the inverted role that we tend to play. So he's one of the players that we say they don't get freebies, and for him, he's definitely one of those players that's not getting a freebie tonight. He's in there to prove that he's worthy of being in the team, and it's maybe not make or break for his Celtic career, but it'll be make or break for his chances of getting in the cup final team, I would think.
He's shown, I think, flashes. But he was the player of the month for November, for example. But since then, it's been flashes, Kevin. And what you need to see is you need to see someone who's got the level of consistency that we have enjoyed from the likes of Jota and Maeda. And because that's one thing that you forget, you tend to forget. It becomes an expectancy. These guys are incredibly consistent. Jota's on the bench tonight. He's been amazing this season. Maeda as well, the work rate shown by Maeda in virtually every single game. The engine that he has is unbelievable. And I just don't think we've seen the level of consistency that you would need to be a winger week in, week out from any of the two wingers tonight. I'm going to have to bring Abad into that as well. So I think it's a big night for the pair of them. And whether or not they can put themselves in the shot window for a starting berth in the cup final, it could be make or break for that. Like you say, not for their Celtic careers, but for the big game at the end of this season.
Yeah. On Abada, I don't know if it's a controversial take or not, but my take is he's probably been one of our more disappointing players this season. When you think how well he did last season, he's just not lived up to it this season. We know that there's potentially still big interest in him, and if we were to sell him, we'd be looking for double figures, at least 10 million for him. But as the season's gone on, his impact as a sub, I think, has waned a little bit. His impact as a starting player has not been there. To give him his dues a little bit, he hasn't always started. So when he started, he hasn't played consistent games. Again, he's not had a run of 2 or 3 games to get up to speed, which I think was something that yourself and Peter were discussing quite a lot at the weekend. The players might be match fit, but are they Ange fit? Yeah. And Abad is maybe one of those boys that needs 2 or 3 games to get up to that level again, and he hasn't had it. And that maybe skews the opinion that he's been actually quite a disappointment this season, although he's still got a decent return of goals and assists. The consistency over the full term of the season hasn't been there. And if he wants to push on as a player himself, he's going to have to become more consistent with us before he can do that for anyone else.
For sure. And the thing is, I'm not surprised that there's been interest in him, because you look at his age, you look at what he's done, the impact over the 2 seasons has been impressive. But as you say, I would tend to agree with that. Someone who maybe brings the data in would say actually he's had a decent enough season. And I'm pretty sure he has. But I mean, his standards and his levels were set so high, Kev, that you do expect him to make an impact. And I'm hoping for both players tonight that they both have an impact, because, I think that we have seen flashes from Haksabanovic, and we've seen match-winning performances from Abada. However, not many this season. And I think that's a biggie. There was that opportunity against Rangers, 12 yards out. You would expect him to put that away without thinking. He just didn't have the decisiveness or the clinical edge that we're kind of used to from him. So match-winning performances, plenty last season.
Yeah, not so much this. And if he gets that chance last season, or if he got it in the first Glasgow derby of this season, he does score it.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, he's just, he seems to be one of those players. As I say, I think he needs a few games before he gets up to speed. And until he gets there, he looks as if he's a confidence kind of player, and he's not quite got it at the moment. He needs one thing to go right for him, as is usually the case with a winger. It's kind of, if you beat the man first time in the game, you're going to have a good game. If you don't, you're going to have a poor game. He seems to be a little bit like that at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. If he gets a goal tonight, he could get 2 or 3 because he's got that in him. He just needs to bring it out more often.
He does. 13 goals were scored against Hibs in 3 games this season for the loss of only 2. So I'm going to make a prediction tonight and say that there's going to be a few goals scored. Marquis would like for the club, here's an interesting one, I never even thought about this, Mark, to put the team up on its website, as we don't all use Twitter. Interesting. I didn't even realise that, the team lines, the graphic, didn't make its way onto the website. So that, I think that's a decent suggestion. Yeah, you would think in this day and age, across the board.
Yeah.
Aye,
there's a match centre on the website, so you'd have thought just stick it on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that we want to improve with Celtic, right? And there's some things, for example, the season tickets have been released and announced for the women's team, who have had a great season and continue to have a great season. We want to see more games at Celtic Park. That's the first thing we would say. Mm-hmm. And also it's interesting when you look at the performance this season, Kevin, that we have something like half the budget of the other 2 teams we were fighting with. So Rangers and Glasgow City have got double the budget of Celtic women. And I mean, that's something that if you're really serious about pushing the game, we need to increase that, don't we? Be that through sponsorship or the club putting more of an onus on the women's team. That's something that needs to improve.
100% that needs to improve. And it's actually embarrassing that 2 other teams in the country are prepared to spend double on their women's team than we are. Yeah. How does the club, what's the word I'm looking for here? How can they justify that? I think that's the word I'm looking for. How can they justify such a little spend on the club when there's clearly an interest in it? In the last 2 games that we've had at Celtic Park, we've broken the domestic record of attendance for games both times. Broke our own record that we'd only set a week before. Mm-hmm. The interest level is there. We've got a manager in Fran Alonso who clearly loves the club, loves his job, is determined and desperate to bring success to Celtic. Back him. You've seen what he's done on what is essentially a shoestring budget compared to his 2 rivals. He's taken them down to the very last second of the last game of the season, before the league was taken away. Give him the backing that he needs, and we should be winning the league next season if we do that. If we back the manager, I think he'll bring us success.
Someone check the figures and let us know who has half the budget of Celtic in the league, right? And would they be able to push us to within a minute of winning the league? No chance. That shows you the level of the achievement.
There won't be a team in the
it'll be us, Rangers, and then a big drop.
And then your next team is miles away.
Yeah. But that's the point. No, you wouldn't expect a team to be punching. They're punching above their weight in a big
massively. Your next team's going to be Aberdeen probably, and look at them. They've struggled big time this season.
Yeah.
So and Fran has just done. I think he's done a tremendous job with basically one arm tied behind his back. Give him his backing, release that arm, and let him see where he can take the club.
I think we'll be pushing for that, Kevin. Now we've got our teeth into it. Now, Daniel Brown, more about protecting players for the final. There certainly will be a bit of that. If you want to rest anybody, now's the time. We brought up a point you and Boy Martin made earlier on in the bulletin earlier on in relation to David Turnbull. I thought we might have seen him tonight. I thought we might have seen a start for Turnbull tonight because he's not had many games. We know what he can do, yes, but he'll be a bit rusty. He'll be a bit ring rusty. And I can't see him starting against Aberdeen. So that's unfortunate. Now, kick-off time has crept up on us there, Kevin. We got carried away with various other matters. So let's go to the game. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Over 600 live on the pre-match stream. Join us at halftime, and we'll be talking, hopefully, about Celtic's resounding first-half performance. All that's left for me to say is thank you once again, Kevin McCluskey, for joining me on a Celtic State of Mind.
Nice one. Cheers.